The story I bring for you today is the story of Erin Patterson. She's from Australia, or the land down under, and she is the one that is currently accused of using death cap mushrooms to poison her ex-mother-in-law, father-in-law, her mother-in-law's sister, and her husband. Before we get into that, welcome back to my channel, True Crime Fans. I am your host, Tim Stolberg, and I encourage you to hit that subscribe button down below. I want to continue to grow the channel. Leave a like if you like this video, and leave me a comment on anything that I missed or anything that I can improve in my future videos. So that being said, let's get into the case of Erin Patterson. So there's a lot to unpack in this case. Now, I want to keep it as streamlined as possible for you, so we'll just start at the very basic beginning of the day that 4 people end up getting very sick. 3 of those people end up dying. So on a July day, only a month ago, Erin Patterson's mother-in-law, Gail, father-in-law, Don, Gail's sister, Heather, and Heather's husband, Ian, came over for lunch at Erin's house, and they ate beef Wellington with a mushroom gravy. Now, shortly after eating this, 4 of them got really sick, and they thought that it was a really bad case of food poisoning. Now, not much time goes on, and 3 out of the 4 end up dying. Gail, Dawn, and Heather have all passed away. Ian is still clinging on to life to this day. Now, Erin said that she went to the hospital afterwards and ended up with an IV. She also said that she brought some of that food to be able to sample to see what made everybody sick. Okay? So I want to unpack a few things because, like anybody on this channel, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. However, a lot of the evidence is pointing in the way of Erin, and from my personal opinion, I would say that Erin planned this out in a dark, mysterious way. But hear me out first. So, first things first, we got to go back to 2022 when Erin was taking care of her ex-husband. For a 2-week period of time, her ex-husband had a quote-unquote flu, which he thought possibly could be poisoning. Now, at that time, Erin was taking care of her ex-husband. What's weird is that she kept a really good relationship with her mother and father-in-law. Now, I say weird because in many cases, when you get a divorce or they become exes, you don't spend a lot of time with these folks. Historically, it shows that, a high percentage of people don't even get along with their in-laws. Doesn't mean everybody, and it's not abnormal if you do get along with your in-laws, because some people do, but it's not abnormal not to. So in this case, it's just weird that she's having lunch with her in-laws and they wind up being sick. Part number 2 that comes out through the police investigation is that Erin recently threw out a food dehydrator. So for anybody that's used a food dehydrator in the past, typically you're going to use them to take any moisture out of food. Now, this works great for mushrooms, especially if you want to use mushrooms in a gravy or in some sort of saute, or you need them where they need to be dried out and not have a lot of moisture. Other good examples would be like fruit, if you want to make fruit chips, or if you wanted to make beef jerky out of beef, and so on and so forth. So for whatever reason, before the investigation, she had thrown out a food dehydrator. Okay? That doesn't make her guilty at this point, but that would tell us that she knows what she's doing when she's cooking. Now, the meal itself was a beef Wellington, and anybody that's watched any kind of show knows that beef Wellington is not an easy item to cook. So, in order for her to do this, she would have to know the ingredients and have to know how to cook it, right? Now, one could argue and say, well, maybe she wasn't a very good cook at all and she just tried it and then they ended up trying it and got sick and they wouldn't have known any better. That is a very real possibility, but you would think that she would know what ingredients were going into this beef Wellington. Now, she does state that the mushrooms that she had been around for a while and that she didn't know that they were death cap mushrooms. Now, is that a possibility? It is. For somebody that's not a trained chef, that is a very real possibility. So let's continue to hit on some of the things that might point in the way that this was intentional. Her kids end up eating the beef Wellington the next day. They don't end up getting sick. But it is said that Erin scraped off all of the mushrooms off of the beef Wellington. So the lead investigator would have to figure out with those kids, is this something that's happened in the past? And is even a dish that Erin has ever made before. Because if it is, then you could argue that away in court that the kids don't normally eat mushroom or anything that goes onto that beef Wellington. If it isn't, you might have another piece of circumstantial evidence that you can present in trial. Okay. The lead investigator also says that there's no coincidence, or he doesn't believe in coincidences between her ex-husband and the mother and father-in-law getting sick in a very similar way. So very interesting stuff right there. Another piece is that Erin did come out and speak. Erin did come out early on and say that the poisoning wasn't intentional, but she does admit to essentially making the meal and inviting the family over. So I'm going to pause right there and I'm going to cue up the news broadcast that basically talks about this, and we'll watch it together.
Erin Patterson says she wants to clear the record.
I'm devastated. I love them.
Revealing she had used mushrooms that she bought from the local supermarket, as well as other dried mushrooms from an Asian grocery store. Cooking a beef Wellington at her home in Leongatha on July 29th for 4 guests. Her former in-laws Don and Gail Patterson and Gail's sister Heather Wilkinson, who all died a week later. Gail's husband, Pastor Ian Wilkinson, remains critically ill. In a written statement sent to Victoria Police via her lawyers last Friday and obtained exclusively by the ABC, Ms Patterson says she too was hospitalised, going to the Monash Medical Centre 2 days after the lunch. I had gone there because I had bad stomach pains and terrible diarrhoea, she said. I was put on a saline drip and stayed in hospital overnight. I was also given some medicine I was told was a liver protective drug. Ms Patterson says her children were not at the lunch as police previously said, and had instead gone to a movie, eating leftovers later which had the mushrooms scraped off. Police have revealed little about the investigation, saying Ms Patterson was a suspect and the deaths were unexplained, but not necessarily suspicious. Detectives returned to a Coonawarra tip last week to speak to staff after taking a dehydrator days earlier. Ms Patterson says the dehydrator was hers and she did take it to the tip in a moment of panic. Police say the victims showed symptoms consistent with poisoning from death cap mushrooms, but they're awaiting toxicology reports. Ms Patterson maintains her innocence and says she is stressed and overwhelmed by the deaths of loved ones. Pastor Ian Wilkinson's family says he remains in a critical but stable condition here at the Austin Hospital. They say they're hopeful and continue to pray for his recovery. Sasha Payne, ABC News, Melbourne.
Okay, so based off of that, you can tell that she has been told by her lawyer not to talk anymore. This is absolutely the right thing to do, even though we want to know more. And I think that all the evidence is pointing her way. The smartest thing that she can do in this moment is not talk until it comes out in a court of law, right? Because you've got to see the arrest affidavit. It is a different court. It is in Australia, but I believe that they still are innocent until proven guilty. For me, I want to explore a different side of things. And I want you to comment down below and let me know if you think I'm on track or if you have a different theory of what happened. So for me, back in 2022, when I would say she was trying to poison her husband, and I'm going to assume that she was. Again, she's innocent until proven guilty, but for this story, we're going to assume that she was trying to poison him. She was not successful, and she tried for a couple weeks, and at the risk of getting caught, she decided, okay, I'm going to quit doing this. I'm going to find a different way to get back at my husband. Ex-husband, sorry. So she devises this plan and figures out that poisoning is still going to be her best course of action because it's probably the action, this is going to be the action that she's least likely to get caught in. So what she ends up doing is she comes up with this plan and says, okay, I can go find these mushrooms, I can dehydrate them, I can essentially put them into the beef Wellington. If they eat enough, they might not even find that in their blood or in their system or in the food itself, and I would have essentially an alibi. And if I'm sick as well, it might just look like I'm a little bit younger and my immune system was able to beat this, okay? So that would be kind of my thought process in that. But I'm going to target my mother-in-law and my father-in-law to get back at my ex-husband. And that's the approach that I am looking at from the perspective of the prosecution as to how I would prove that she was the one that was responsible for doing this. Because whatever reason, she seems like she's a woman scorned, and it seems like anybody that's around her ends up getting sick with flu-like symptoms, which could point to poisoning. And in this case, 3 out of 4 people end up dying, possibly a fourth if Ian doesn't cling on to life. So that all being said, that shows me that there's intent there. That also shows a motive, and it shows that it's just unlucky to be around Erin Patterson. Now, again, there's no smoking gun evidence. There is evidence based that, hey, she was the one that served the dish. She was the one that made the dish. And at the very least, I think they'll end up with manslaughter on her because she should have been the one that was vetting out all the ingredients. Could it have been an accident? Absolutely, it could be an accident. But would that be gross negligence? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Would love to hear from you folks. Leave a comment down below. Am I crazy? Or would that be something that would even pop up? All that being said, a lot of information is going to come out during the court case. So we're going to stick with this story until we find out an outcome through all of the court trials. There is still a possibility that Erin Patterson comes back guilty or looks for a lesser charge. And we can see that through lawyers. She does have a high-priced lawyer, like you heard through the news broadcast. And we can read through the arrest affidavits when they all come out. So based off of that, I want to hear what your opinion is. I want to hear, do you think she's innocent or guilty? What are the reasons that you think she's innocent or guilty? And if I did a good job on this video, please leave a like down below. We want to get this video out to more people. And leave me a comment on how I can improve everything. That being said, I appreciate your time today. I'm your host, Tim Sahlberg. Everybody have a wonderful week. I'm over and out.